Now, in the PDF file, let's look at page 12. Let's change the view here just a little. I'm going to close the profile view. So I'm going to just close view 8. What we want to do on page 12, and the next step, is create a match line along our proposed intersection or driveway or approach element, so that we can differentiate between tying in this roadway or this intersection to this proposed widened section here. And we're going to use an option to create 3D elements automatically. Remember, one of the key elements or key concepts in Open Roads is working between the 2D view and the 3D view. Open Roads has the functionality to allow you to create the three-dimensional element simultaneously or automatically while you create the horizontal element. And that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to create a match line that connects through this proposed edge of pavement across the front of our intersection. So if you haven't already, go and open up the feature definition toggle bar, which I have opened here. If you can't find yours, you can go to the General Geometry menu on the tasks. And on the General Geometry toolbar, if it's not turned on already, you want to click on this button called Feature Definition Toggle Bar, and it should turn it on. One thing that may happen to you as well, if you can't find that toolbar and you click this button and nothing seems to happen, like as you see here that I'm doing, it could be that your feature definition toggle bar is actually on. It's just docked either at the top of the screen, or it could even be docked at the bottom of the screen. So you may have to do a little searching just in case if it's been docked either above or below the view. Open up that feature definition toggle bar, and then we're going to continue on page 12. We want to turn on this button to use the active feature definition. So we'll turn that on. Now we need to select the feature definition. So we'll hit the drop-down menu. We'll browse to the linear settings here. And under the linear settings, we'll open up Geometry. Open up the Geometry folder. And under the Geometry folder, select Match Line. Now that we've defined the feature definition, we've set that to be the active, and we've defined that feature definition to be match line, we want to be certain to turn on the toggle or the button to create 3D automatically, which you see here. If I hover over it, we want to be sure and turn that button on. And that button is going to allow the three-dimensional or the profile to be created automatically as we create or draw the horizontal element across this match line area between these proposed edge of pavements. So be certain that your feature definition toggle bar is turned on, as you see here. That Create 3D automatically is turned on. Now we want to create the horizontal element across the proposed edge of pavement here for the match line. So we'll go to the Civil Tools tab, back on the Task menu, go under Civil Tools, open up Horizontal Geometry, and we'll select the command called Line Between Points. And now we're going to draw that horizontal line between those proposed edges of pavement. So what I want to do now, I want to be certain that I snap to the edges of pavement so that the relationship between the elements for this match line is created. So snap to the edge of pavement there. We'll draw the line across. Snap to the edge of pavement again on the eastern side of the intersection and data point to accept it. And now I'll right click and escape to exit that command. And now you can see the match line as we drew it in 2 dimensions. We drew it horizontally. It also created the match line 3-dimensionally and defined the profile based off of the adjacent edges of pavement in which I snapped to when I created the horizontal. The 3Ds created from those proposed edges of pavement automatically. So we can see that now there. on the feature definition toggle bar, go ahead and turn off Create 3D automatically. And now we're going to work on the match line along the tie area with our existing roadway. Now you'll notice there's an element already placed there horizontally. What we want to do is define the feature definition of that element. So let's click on that element across the existing roadway, open up the Properties dialog box, and let's change the feature definition that we see here. We'll change that to match line, just as we've done before. So we're changing or reassigning a feature definition to that element. So under the feature definitions drop-down menu, we want to browse under the linear folder, browse under the geometry folder, and then select the match line feature definition. And now we can see that match line being displayed. And now that match line's been defined horizontally, and we need to define it vertically. So on page 21 of the document, we have already defined the profiles of these edges of pavement based off of existing terrain. We're going to do the same for this match line. We'll open up the profile view for our match line element, select it, open up the profile model. Again, I closed view 8. You may have closed it or you may have left it open. I'm going to reopen view 8, and I'm going to move the feature definition toggle bar out. Move it down below. Go ahead and turn off the active feature definition on the toggle bar while we're here. And then data point within view 8 to display the profile or the active terrain underneath the match line element that we just created. Just as before, we want to match this pavement, the cross slopes of this roadway. So we'll select that terrain element and we'll define it as the active profile of our match line. Again, the key to this really is recognizing what is displayed in the 3D view. I have nothing displayed vertically or in 3D. There's no profile defined for this horizontal match line element. I'll select that terrain element and set it active. And by doing that now, I have the profile defined for that match line element. That matches the existing roadway surface. So we have three-dimensional elements now created for the edges of pavement and these match lines all the way around our proposed simple intersection. So on page 16, as we work through the exercise, we're going to build a terrain model out of those three-dimensional elements. We're going to generate triangles and build a terrain out of those elements. And we want to go over to the task menu again under Civil Tools, go to the Terrain Model Tools, and we're going to use the command called Create from Elements. So we're going to create the terrain model simply by selecting the profiled elements that we want to include in our terrain. So we'll select the element Create, or the tool Create from Elements, follow the prompts. Now on the dialog box, we want to define the feature definition properly. So this is step 3 of the document, and number A, letter A. Pick the feature definition menu, and under the drop down we want to open up the folder called Terrain Display, and we want to define the feature definition for our surface to be set to Design Triangles. So it's going to define the feature definition. It's going to display based off of this feature definition. You can change the name. There's no need to at this point. You could. If you wanted to change that name to something, you could. We're just going to leave it as is. Now we move back into the view and we follow the prompts. Locate the elements that I want to add to the terrain model. We're selecting the elements in the 2D view. So I'll select the match line, the edges of pavement, the edge of pavement, or the match line on the other side, and the edge of pavement, and the edge of pavement. Okay? Now it hasn't highlighted those here, but I recognize that I have selected them properly. Now following the prompts, I'm going to right click, that's the reset. As we're done, we want to define the feature type to be a break line. And I can cycle through the options of the different feature types by hitting the down arrow. So we'll hit the down arrow until we come to the break line option. Set the feature type to break line, data point. Then for the edge method, we want to set that to max triangle length, just as you see here. Again, you can cycle through the options by clicking the down arrow on your keyboard. Data point to accept that option. And we want to define the maximum side length to be 2 feet if you're using imperial units, or 0.61 meters if you're using metric units. So we'll key in 2 and hit the tab key or data point, and that will create the terrain model. You can see the triangles that were generated here in my view 1, in my 2-dimensional view, as well as in my 3D view. So we've now created a terrain model out of those 3-dimensional edge of pavement and match line elements that we previously created.